Welcome, 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 everyone, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is, whatever day it is. If you're watching on the replay, you are magic and you're so lucky because you'll get to replay a lot of what we're talking about if it interests you in that moment. So welcome to Inspire, Innovate, Ignite, Conversations That Count. Our guest experts tonight, I'm going to name them, but in just a moment, but they have been chosen especially because of their insight into our topic tonight. And this is actually another in the Life Affirmations series. And tonight we're going to be talking about celebrating challenge versus failure. Now, the interesting thing with challenge versus failure, you'll notice that challenge is quite often seen as a negative thing. Failure is definitely not always seen as a positive thing. And if any of our very sensitive people are watching, you know that law of attraction says, don't go there because it's going to attract more of the same. But we know as experts that when we celebrate, when we bring the positive into anything that's negative, it changes entirely and it becomes magic. So that's what our conversation tonight is all about. It's celebrating challenge versus failure. Now, our guests tonight, our guest experts are Perry-Davies, Marina Shakour Haber, Stuart Elliot, and Donna Maltz, who has not quite joined us yet, but I know she will. So I'm going to ask our guest panelists to please introduce themselves one at a time. And as soon as you finish your introduction, I'm going to ask you to slide right into what is it that you do to celebrate challenge or failure or both. Okay, just so we get a flavor of the positive before we move into the heavy duty questions. So I'm going to call on Perry-Davies first. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks so much, Sue. First of all, I'm just really happy to be here. I've been excited about this the whole time. So my name is Perry-Davies. I am from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I am a podcast host for Find Your Joy is my podcast. I'm an author. My book is The Art of Healing Trauma, Finding Joy Through Creativity, Spirituality, and Forgiveness. And that's a lot of what I do. I'm a sound bath practitioner, art therapist. I do a lot of things, and that will help me easily slide into why do I do so many things? Well, I had an opportunity to change my entire life about 8 years ago. 8 years ago, unfortunately, I was hit by a distracted driver. I sustained a rather significant brain injury. I spent the first few years really walking and talking was a bit of a challenge. A lot of falling down, a lot of slurring, a lot of trying to figure it all out. I had a job that I loved. I had a career in music that I loved, and everything changed that day. So I spent some time with pulling the covers over my head and crying about that. That definitely happened. But the other thing that happened was I got to go deep and find out, what am I going to do with this? Like the prognosis isn't great. I would rather not just sit at home and worry about it. So I started to do things. I started to challenge myself. And I think challenge is a really positive word. So there we start with that. I think challenge is an awesome word. I love it. And so I started to challenge myself and change my life. And we can talk about the rest later. I'd love to hear about everybody else.
It sounds to me, as if you are really celebrating all of the challenges. I can just see it in your face. You're radiating celebration. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Stuart, would you like to unmute and tell us a little bit about you and how it is that you celebrate either challenge or failure?
Yeah, obviously my name's Stuart Elliot, but I'm coming to you from the south of China. And that in itself is a challenge sometimes with the technology and the firewalls and everything else, but it's my choice to come here. So I find a way through, and that's what it's about for me. I mean, I help people break through the BS barriers that keep them trapped in, their own mental prison. And once they get out of that, then they can become the best version of themselves that they can. So my view is that challenges are opportunities. They're always growth opportunities. Sometimes, as Ali just mentioned, they can be very difficult to get through. But when we get through them and we look back, we can see that it's actually been such a wonderful growth process. And I'm sure we've all had challenges in that respect. And today was a challenge for me. I mean, I came to sign into Zoom, and on 3 separate devices, it wouldn't let me sign in because it needed a passcode. So, and I just changed my email. So I said, okay, well, let's sign up for a fresh account so that I can join the panel today. So we find a way around if we don't lock ourselves down. And that's the thing. And once we do that, we realize all the possibilities, and that's a beautiful celebration.
Perfect. I could not ask for more. Stuart, thank you so much for sharing that. And Marina, welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you celebrate challenge or failure?
Or both.
Or both.
Well, as you can see, my name is Marina Shakour Haber. I am an author. I wrote 2 books, Dream a Better Dream and Your GPS to Happiness, which I published last year. I am also a life coach. I was previously in the healthcare industry, and for me, there's always been a calling in doing something to help others. I left the industry because the universe hit me over the head so many times until I finally listened and said, oh, I guess my path is changing. And so I did. The challenge was listening. And once I listened, it was a struggle for me, I would say, to come out of my spiritual closet, to embrace that other part that I would have preferred to keep the door closed on, which was expressing who I am. And well, I have grown and learned, and every challenge is amazing, is fabulous. I have started last year to do clinical hypnotherapy. Today, I am celebrating my first baby born, not mine, but a client gave birth, and with hypnobirthing, and whoo, I'm on the high. Beautiful. That was beautiful.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think you've answered how you celebrate challenge. You just exude it. It's all over your face. We're waiting. We have not yet had Donna join us. She will, but I'd like to welcome Bianca. And I think, Bianca, you are probably one of our guests this evening. Is that correct? We have oh, there we go.
Hi, Bianca. I'm one of the guests. Nice to
Wonderful. Well, it's lovely to have you. Please, as we're going through our questions, if you have any questions, you can either put them into the chat or raise a finger to let us know that you'd like to ask a question. To make these conversations interactive makes them real. So I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. Okay, I'm Sue Rumack. I'm Sue Rumack. I'm the host facilitator of the panel. I actually thought up the series, the Life Affirmations series, and this is, I think, one of the last in the series. I'm a life coach. I'm an empath trainer. I'm a somatics trainer. I'm an energy healer. I'm a channeler, a medium. I'm a speaker, an author of many spiritual books that are available either on Amazon or self-published. And I've been doing this for 16 years. I am fascinated by challenge. I've learned to celebrate challenge in every failure, every setback, every life change, because you'd think that a challenge would hit you in the face, knock you over, and have you, like Ali said, in your bed with the covers over your head crying. And it does do that for a minute, okay? Or it can do that for months and years. So I'm hoping that our conversation today will help to create a new perspective and mindset about how our audience could look at the challenges that they are going through right now, and even go back and do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the failures, things that they thought were failures, but if you really look at them, were life-changing events that took them in a new direction. So that's where we're going today. And I'm going to ask my first question, which is obvious. We've talked about how we celebrate it, but how do you define challenge? How do you define failure? So I'm going to start with Marina. this time. How do you define challenge? How do you define failure?
I would say that challenge, without challenge, life would be, first of all, so utterly boring. And it's just like being on a roller coaster that's just not going anywhere. Who would want to be on it? It just really is dull. And through challenges, we grow, we expand, we experience, which is our purpose on earth, is to expand, to grow through experience. It is challenges that also bring out our true essence, I would say, not necessarily our best, because not everyone thrives under challenge, but it really shows, it shows your colors. It shows whether you are tend to be the victim, tend to be just giving up and throwing it away, sitting in your chair and moaning, or if you're picking yourself up and saying, all right, so I was hit over the head, let's go. There has to be more to this. And I find that in everything is, number one, something positive, and also number two, there's a message. There's a message for us that we make, as in GPS, rerouting. You may want to tweak this a little bit. Challenges to failures, those are our tweaks. You must do something to adjust it. I don't think it's necessarily about aborting missions. Sometimes that may be necessary. But when we look back at our life, it seems as if it was a planned moment when we look back in 2020 hindsight, because it got us to something often far better, far deeper, and far more profoundly changing for us.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Very briefly now, in comparison, now you've talked about challenge. How do you actually define what could be a failure? Because there are things that happen to us or things that we undertake that don't succeed. So how do we, you've talked about how to celebrate the challenge now in two different questions, but how do you define failure? And is it possible to celebrate a failure?
Absolutely. Failure is like falling. If you don't fail, then you haven't tried anything at all. If you haven't failed, you haven't tried something new. If you haven't failed, you haven't challenged yourself. You haven't done anything new, and that's the greatest failure of them all. So failure is like falling, and we better fall plenty of times and get a lot of good courage as we're falling. And it's just part of it. It helps us to grow.
Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to slide over to Stuart now to ask you again, one more time, how do you define challenge? How do you define failure?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because in some ways, and depending on where your lexicon is, failure and challenge can almost be interchangeable. So, you know, if you think of failure, the challenge there is to define it in a positive way rather than a negative way. And a lot of people, they do fall into that victim mentality, which Marina pointed out, and they just give up because something didn't work out the way they planned it, but they don't bother looking further than that, or they don't understand, should we say, maybe bother is not the right word, they don't understand that they can look for that and they can look for a positive benefit. And, you know, failures really are opportunities, you know, in disguise. So if we look at it that way, and then obviously Edison with his, you know, I just found so many thousand ways that it didn't work. It doesn't mean I failed. It's actually a great thing. I found all these ways that didn't work. So now I can find the way that will work. So it depends on our mindset. And challenge, I think, is more, for me anyway, leaning to a stretching yourself rather than having something easy. So it's more of a growth process, but it's more of, it's like going to the gym. You start off lifting 10 kilos and then you gradually get to 20, 30 or whatever it is you move on to, but it's stretching yourself. And again, stretching is like you go to the gym, you have to do some stretch exercises, and you can't maybe do this one until you've exercised and made them bigger and bigger and bigger or more flexible, and then you get there. So there's an interchangeable part to them, but there is a separation. And I think really for failure, it is that internal thinking that we give up. There's nothing I can do. I'm helpless. That to me is the end definition of failure. But the challenge is to not let yourself go down there, to see it as opportunities.
I love the way you use the word challenge. The challenge when you're going down into that failure place, that victim place, is to
it's so
stop
easy
yourself.
to fall there, isn't it?
No, it is so easy to fall there. And I think sometimes we have to fall there for a little while so that we can begin to redefine who we are. So we can begin to look at those changes. But I love what Marina had to say, and I love how you built it out even more. Please.
Sorry.
No.
The question is, when you fall there, do you give up, or do you just gather your breath and then think about something else? Okay, yeah, I don't like it here. I can get out.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have to put the ladder up against the wall and climb up one step at a time.
Yep,
yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely. It's funny. I was ill November, December, January of this past year. And I was in hospital for quite a while. And from the hospital, I started writing notes to myself, but also notes to all my friends. And I called it Victim to Victor. And every day I would send off a little story or a note or an anecdote to this group of 20 people. And they found that they knew what I was going through. And they said that those notes brought them more hope. And they lifted me up, because I didn't know where I was going to end up at the end of this illness. But I'm here and I'm great and I'm fine and everything's wonderful. But it is that moving from victim to victor mindset. And when you're, like you said, when you've fallen down, and like Marina said, when you've fallen down, when you reach that point, you have to make a decision. And that decision is, are you going to stay there? Or are you going to do something that impels you up in just a little bit at a time? Because it's sometimes too hard to do it all at once. I love all of these answers because you're segueing one into the other. And now I'm going to move it on to Ali to give us her version, her definition of failure and challenge.
Thanks. I've loved what everybody's been sharing. I think for me, one of the things that I see for a challenge is typically, something I choose. That's how I think of it. When I think of a challenge, it's something that maybe I'm going to learn a new language, or I'm going to take a course somewhere. I'm going to eat healthier or walk more or commit to taking my dog for more walks, whatever it is, whatever I've challenged myself to do, it's basically something that's going to push the boundaries on my comfort zone a little bit. That's why it's challenging to me. It's challenging to me because I might want to do it, but it's going to take a little bit of extra effort. And am I going to commit to that? Am I going to decide that I'm worth it? Am I going to decide that what I want to do matters enough to me, that I'm going to take those extra steps? I'm going to be okay when it pushes up against my comfort zone. I'm like, I don't think this is fun, or this is a lot of work, or this isn't or I'm anxious, or whatever thing comes through my mind about that. Challenge to me, well, not always, of course, but typically it's something that I've chosen. And so that makes it a little bit easier to do it, only because I've already decided it's worth it to me. I think that when I think this, I liked very much what Stuart had said about challenges and failures, how they weave together like they make a braid of a sort, because there's the challenge of, this isn't working how I thought it was going to. And then now it's gone down this slippery slope of a bit of a crash and burn here, whether that's whatever it is, whatever thing that I've undertaken, whether that's a business or a relationship or something isn't going well, then I have this opportunity to say, I've got to shift things here. this isn't working. That's my chance to say, and I loved when, I can't remember, I'm sorry, who had said it before, but it's just an opportunity to say, okay, these things didn't work. So now I get to go back and be a scientist, or, so, I get to come up with new ideas, new ways. If this didn't work, and I would still like to do something in this area, how am I going to shift it? And if I've changed my mind and I think, you know what, I don't actually think this thing is for me, then what I thought was a failure was incredible enlightenment. It was something that said, hey, the way that you're going isn't working. And so I think that when I think of failure, I think sometimes I'm programmed to think of it a little bit of, several years in school, first as a child and then as an adult, you go to write a test. You're given an amount of time to do it in, and you're given a score, and this is the pass and this is the fail. And so I needed to shift my thinking and saying, well, this isn't a timed event. Life isn't a timed event until I'm gone. So I need to always remember that this is not a test. I'm not writing a test at school where if I don't get whatever the percentage is, 80%, it's over. Even a test, I can rewrite it. Even a test, I can go and study more and still learn the information. And I think that's the part where we can sometimes get in this headspace where it feels very defeatist. And as long as I can remember that it's not over, as long as I'm going to continue to move forward, it's almost like there's no such thing as failing. I guess that's where I'm at with it.
Oh, I love that. There's no such thing as failing. I'm hoping that everybody just took that in. I'm hoping everybody took in Stuart's slippery slope, and you don't have to end up as the victim, and Marina's total exuberance over how a failure turns into a win, and a challenge is a beginning place, not an ending place. So we've had some incredible shares just in the very first few minutes of our conversation here. Ali, I'm going to ask you to stay on because I want you to I want you to lead the next question, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. If anybody has any questions, if you'd like to put them into the chat, Bianca, if you have a question, now is a great time to ask it. Trina, if there's anything in the Facebook group, perhaps you could let us know. That'd be amazing. Here is the next question. It's personal. Could you share a challenge in your own life? Oops, I just lost my question. Could you share a challenge in your own life that felt as if it was red flagged? Now, red flagged for what? You can choose. Was it red flagged for success, or was it red flagged for failure? What happened? And in hindsight, would you have done anything different? That's my question.
Okay. I think well, I have several. I have a long list of things where I made very poor choices throughout my life. If I think anybody gets to be, I'm just about 64. So I've had a lot of opportunity to make very poor choices and some really good choices. So I think what I'll share is a business that I had about 20, I'm not really sure, whatever, 20 years ago or something. And, I went and I took a year course on this entrepreneurial thing. And then I went and took another course and that was all about creating my business plan. And I hope that this will answer the question, but it's what comes to my mind. So I had this idea for business, and I was doing really well. But one of the mentors in the program said to me early on, I had this great idea that I wanted to give to the community, and that's where I was going to start out. And this person, who was very wise and had much more business experience than me, said to me, that's a bad idea. You need to stabilize your business first and then go on from there. And I was just really excited. And I thought, well, I appreciate your time to tell me that, but this is what I'm going to do. So I continued on the path, and I had many opportunities to see that what I was doing wasn't working. And I got a bit like a dog with a bone, and I wasn't going to let it go. And I'm going to say, I don't look really good in a lot of my stories. Let's just get that out front. So that's where I started with that. And I got very involved in that. And what ended up happening was, even though there was red flags everywhere and people telling me that what I was doing wasn't working, I chose at that time to stay with my focus, like manna from heaven was going to come down and I was going to be able to do these things. Well, it didn't work out that way. And I lost a lot, for a lot, what was a lot of money for us at the time. And so the red flags that I'm talking about are sometimes red flags weren't for me anyways, simply, gee, I wonder, little twigglings. People were actually speaking to me. People cared enough about me to tell me and try to direct me another way. And I chose not to listen. I kind of listened, I smiled and nodded, but I didn't really adhere to their advice. And so I think that why I wanted to share that was that sometimes our red flags seem a little bit off and distant. And I think that I fooled myself, I lied to myself, and I pretended somehow in my mind, in my imagination, that, well, what they meant was something other than the words they had clearly spoken. Well, or yeah, I understand that for other people, but. And so I worked it that way. Now, I want to say it was a crash and burn. The much of that business was a crash and burn. I lost money. And I decided not to revive it again. I closed the doors and that was it. But here's what came out of it. I really listen now. If someone that I trust and gives me their time and their expertise, a little less, I think I know what I'm doing, and a little more, I'm going to listen and really pay attention. It was humbling. It was painful. It was, it didn't need to happen. And even though I understand that as a business, it was a failure, there was still some really wonderful things that came out of it. And there's people that remember my business and talk to me about it years later. And I think, well, wow, I'm glad you had a great experience, because over here, it was not that pleasant. And I think that those are some of the things I learned, that sometimes our failures, or mine anyway, sometimes my failures didn't need to happen. I could have listened more. And
so what's your celebration in this? What's your celebration in that failure?
My celebration is that it completely changed how I saw things. I was allowed to finally go, I don't have the answers. I don't have to have the answers. It's okay that if I don't have the answers. And I learned from it. And I think that one of the biggest things is, now that I celebrate it, now when I move forward in things, I have that memory, but it doesn't feel harsh or judging to me at all. It's like, oh, I won't do that again.
What a wonderful share. Thank you. You took us to the depths and then you brought us back up again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stuart, would you like to go next on that question? So could you share a challenge in your own life that was red flagged, and what happened? How did you celebrate it?
Yeah, and I've got to go back in time for this one, because it's a beautiful lesson I was given, but it took me a while to realize the full import of the lesson. So back in '86, I was doing an overland tour through Africa, driving through many different countries from South Africa back to the UK. And we camped in Kenya, in a place in the Masai Mara Game Reserve, or just outside the Masai Mara Game Reserve. And we were sat one evening around the fire, toasting our toes, as we tended to do. And out of nowhere, 3 Maasai warriors appeared. They just materialized out of thin air. It was so unreal that, what the heck's happening type of thing. But fortunately, these guys were very, very friendly. They were just curious about, who were these people making a fire and camping in our area, because that's their land, basically. And I was so excited because I saw it as an opportunity for me to barter for a Maasai spear. I'd been in Nairobi and I'd seen the tourist shops, and the spears and stuff they had there were, number one, very, very expensive, but number two, they just didn't look real. They looked more fake. And this is a genuine warrior with a genuine spear. And I'd come prepared to Africa with some barter goods, one of which, and this is going back into 86, was a scientific calculator, which was the latest thing. They were so new that, I thought this is going to be something so special. Everybody's going to want it. So I rushed to my tent, grabbed it, and came back, and I started talking to this one Maasai warrior. And I said, look, I'd like to swap this for your spear, type of thing. And he was such a beautiful person. And he took it and he looked at it. He took it out of the box. He played with it, made a few calculations. He said, oh, it's wonderful. And then he put it back in the bag and he put it back in the box. He said, but what use is it to me here? And the way he said it with such nobility, with such, gentleness and sincerity, I just disappeared, because I looked at myself and I said, you are such a fool, so involved in yourself. You've got no idea, what this use is. And many years later, I thought to myself, something, Stuart, you didn't even consider where he's going to get a battery if it goes flat, because he's living in the middle of nowhere. He's protecting his cattle from the lions, from the wild animals. What use is it going to be? So it was a beautiful lesson. It was so humbling. And because I was in that stage of my growth, I disappeared into myself and I wanted to hide away. I didn't have any further contact with anybody. But what I missed is that if I'd have been able to recognize that and face that and say, okay, look, I'm very sorry. I was too involved in myself. I could have had a beautiful conversation with the person because he was so noble. Now, if he'd have got angry, it would have been easier because I could have lost myself in the anger and got triggered there. But no, he was just so honest, so noble about it. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful lesson. But it took me quite a while to think of all the layers of it. And obviously one of the keys is whatever interaction you have, provide real value to the other person. And I wasn't doing that.
So basically step out of yourself and your own story and step into their story to see what you can learn from them.
Yeah, but it was such a beautiful way it was delivered to me. And I'm so grateful to that gentleman for it, but it took me a long while to get out of myself to learn that.
Aren't these stories incredible? And don't they teach us about humanity and our spirituality too, at the same time, going inside ourselves instead of stepping into that person's humanity to learn more about him? What an opportunity. I think, Stuart, that would you say that this has colored how you approach people in different situations today?
Definitely, it's definitely helped. I mean, that I've had many, many other interactions, just like we all have. And Ali mentioned, it is about that growth process. And isn't life beautiful that it can take us on these journeys? Sometimes, as has been mentioned earlier, the door has to be knocked on many, many times before we hear that lesson. Because
I agree with that one.
Dumb. We get a bit dumb, don't we?
A little lost in our own stories, our own egos, yes, and our own feeling of insignificance sometimes when we're challenged in a way like that. Stuart, what a beautiful share.
We shrink, don't we? We go inside and disappear.
We do. I can't imagine anybody. Well, I know from my own clients that when they are in situations like yours, and it doesn't have to be a Maasai warrior with an incredible tortoise spear, but it could just be a teacher, it could be a clergy person, it could be a friend at school, that puts us into that place of insignificance in our own minds, in our own bodies. So thank you so much for sharing that. And
there's just one thing I like to add. There's so much truth in this little saying, rise to the occasion. Absolutely. And it's so all-encompassing. So it's something that I think we can all think about and see how we can apply, but it's not always easy, definitely.
Celebrating the challenge, celebrating the failure, celebrating the victim, celebrating the victor, all of it. Thank you. Yeah. And now we're going to turn to Marina. The question was, could you share a challenge in your own life that was red flagged, and what happened? In hindsight, what would you have done differently?
hindsight, I would have listened to the voice that I trusted as I was on my way up. And then when things were not so good, I chose to, the self-doubt, clouding my judgment, clouding my knowing, because I knew better and I didn't stand up for what I knew, because it's called, I was afraid, what if I'm wrong? Story was occasionally, but in this case, let's be specific. I had a decision to make, and I had made a decision. It was about my business. And we had a contract from a very large hospital. It was one of our main accounts. And it was a bid, and they pretty much hand-fed it. We were already their biggest supplier of nurses, per diem nurses. And as I did many other things, I gave it to my husband. Although I was the president, I had my husband fill it out. He was good at that. They sent it back to us. I read through it and I saw there was a red flag, and I said, don't you think that they know we had some labor issues? Don't you think that they're saying that we should state this, what happened, and not pretending it didn't? And my husband yelled at me and hollered at me that I was risking our business. And if I did this honesty thing, that I would jeopardize our business. And I allowed him to intimidate me. I allowed myself to shut up. And what I didn't realize, though, was whether I was right or I was wrong. It was whether I was shut up or I spoke my truth. The decision was mine, and the responsibility was mine. Either way, so you might as well make your own decisions. That was my lesson, because we didn't get the contract and they pointed it out. All we asked you is to state that you had labor issues, overtime issues. And yes, we did lose the account. And that was the first red flag that I learned from. It's called speak your truth. And when you see something, don't kid yourself. It's what I chose to do, and it lasted for some time, was being the imposter, had that imposter syndrome. Oh, I can't do that. And what if it goes wrong? The what ifing, the worrying, and meantime, you're getting it all wrong because you're so in your head and you're so overthinking it. And not speaking your truth is really one of, I think, the biggest failures. That is one of the things that I find that we go wrong. In any event, I learned from it. Not that it cured me yet. I still lied to myself, because in the end, it was about growing up. It was about acknowledging that I am powerful and that I don't need to hide. I don't need to play by everyone's rules. And frankly, I don't need to be liked by everyone. That's just the way it goes. Stand up and just speak your truth. And I'm happier with it that way.
Oh, all of your answers lead, like, I think Ali used the word, a rope that connects each answer to the next. And it's just wonderful how this rope just keeps going and circling round our group of experts, each one adding another pearl to the necklace on that rope. Marina, stay on, please, because I'm going to ask you for the next question.
Yes.
Okay. Now, everybody on this call is a coach in some way or other, and leads people to their own answers. So I'm going to ask you, do you have a step-by-step process to evaluate challenges, your own personal step-by-step, to evaluate challenges before jumping in neck deep? So you lean more towards success than towards an old behavior that could have led to failure. So step-by-step process to evaluate challenges before jumping in.
The first step that I am learning is to step back, step out, step back, because when we're in it, we can't see it. We are too involved, we become too emotional, And decisions made based on an emotional state, same as when you buy a house and you're so emotionally involved. Oh, this is the best house. Then you get there, you go, oh, maybe it wasn't. I'm so emotionally involved. Step back to become a neutral observer. Then you need to decide on the plan. And what I heard today was quite appropriate. A gentleman was asked, explain how to take a shower. He said, get in, lather, get out. And in this book, the gentleman wrote, he said, don't you think that if someone didn't know how to shower, that they wouldn't know what to do with these 3 simple steps? You need to make every little step if someone doesn't know it. Yes. So what I took out of it is, yes, write down every simple baby step that will get you to where you want to be. And then I have learned is the smaller steps you take regularly, daily, the greater your success. These big steps, the one step at a time, is usually a major defeatist action because you get so overwhelmed that it blows you right out the other way. You go, forget about it, I'm done. So small steps, but write your steps out. And always with the goal in mind. I always put the goal because that's the pull. It has to excite you. Because if it doesn't excite you, if it doesn't really get your juices flowing and you really are into it, then you're not going to get through it. Because if there's no excitement, ask yourself if you really want to do this. But still, then again, still stepping out, still, the 2 different stages, and then simply follow your steps. And if you go wrong, guess what? To everything, there are multiple perspectives. Change your perspective. Go another way. You don't climb a hill straight up. You go in loop-de-loops. No one climbs this hill straight. So just consider it, it's a turning point. Turn.
Thank you. That is the simplest, easiest advice that anybody at any level in any kind of a challenge, they can, no matter where they are in that challenge, they can actually start over using your steps. Thank you, Marina. We're going to go to Ali next. Ali, do you have a step-by-step process to evaluate a challenge before jumping in neck deep? And if so, what is that?
Well, I'm a cautiously spontaneous person. So there's times for all of it, I suppose. I do have a way that I do things. Like right now in our life, in our family, I'll say we're looking at moving to a different province. And so I'm going to use my own experience and what we're going through. So my plan always when I'm doing something is to plan, and plan again, know where I'm going so that when I take my step, it's not a shock to me. I like to be surprised. I don't like to be shocked. I find this to be quite different experiences. So much like what Marina was talking about in taking the little steps. So if I'm, say, about to do something different, I'm going to make sure that I understand the terrain in which I'm about to explore. So I'm going to make sure that I've done a lot of research on the area. I'm going to do a lot of research on what's available. And if I'm sharing with other people in terms of ways to explore, say, dealing with breath work, meditation, anxiety, whatever the thing that anyone is facing or whatever I'm facing, I like to explore a little bit and see, okay, so if I'm going to do this thing, what's it going to look like over there? And so I invite other people to just explore a little bit before you head out. And why I'm talking about moving to another province, because it's very much, that's a concrete way to do that. So what am I doing? Well, I'm going to go online and check out different areas. I'm going to go and visit those areas. I'm going to walk on the ground because I'm very big on feeling the energy of the earth beneath my feet. I like to feel what's in that actual area. To take a look around, see if what is in these places, whether that's a location or a thought or a plan or a goal, what does that look like when you're there? Because if I don't know what that looks like, if I don't know what peace looks like, or a home looks like, or weight loss looks like, or financial planning, if I don't know what my goal is, if I haven't thoroughly researched what I want it to actually look like, I might flop around a little bit. So the planning and the little steps, I love what Marina said. And for me, I really, for myself and those that I'm with, I encourage people, have a pretty clear view on what you want that to look like and taste like and feel like and smell like. What is it going to be like when you're there? And have a clear understanding of that, so that there's delightful surprises, but no ugly shocks.
So basically, we've got, on the one hand, we've got the logical, make your plan, understand your intention, understand plan A, plan B, plan C, be very aware, break it down into the tiniest steps. That's for the logical left brain person. And then we've got Ali, who says, I need to physically be there, taste it, touch it, feel it, sense it, and really test it out before I'm going to make that decision. Okay, so we've talked about two different types of personalities that normally, if one uses one method, they aren't really good at using the other. So we've got two very valid methods before jumping in neck deep. Stuart, your turn. What do you have to offer us for your step-by-step process to evaluate a challenge before jumping in neck deep, so you lean more towards success than failure?
Well, I don't really think I've got a step-by-step process. I like what Marina was saying about awareness and recognizing what's happening, and then accepting that it's happening, and then deciding from there. But part of that awareness, I mean, back in when I was a youngster, we had physical maps, paper maps. We didn't have the GPSs. We didn't have all the electronic devices. So I used to enjoy looking at the map where I was, and looking at the different streets, so I could get a mental picture of where I am. And, you know, that's something that which has always stood me in good stead. But I also trust a lot in myself, and I tend to be a little bit more impulsive and just decide. For instance, when I finished the trip from Africa back to the UK, I got off the ferry on the shores of the UK and said, I'm going back. And 3 months later, I was back. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I just decided that was it. I'm going to do it. So you could say that's impulsive. It could also be that, yeah, this is the place I need to be. I'm listening to that message and that truth in me. But there was no sitting down and doing any evaluations. For me, I get bored. If I have to go to that depth of detail, then I would probably give up on it. And I found out that I am more of a creator, more of a starter, but not necessarily a finisher. So I get the ideas, and I can follow the ideas. And if I go with them, it works, or I find a way to make it work. And I don't look at it as, okay, it didn't work, or this, and there's a problem that, you know, that was a silly thing to do, because we can't look back with regret. We can't look back with this superior wisdom we've got in the, you know, from this point, looking back at a decision we made a long while ago or a short while ago, and say we shouldn't have made it, because it's taken us somewhere, it's given us more insight, it made us a different person. So I think the real answer for me is trust in myself, and knowing that the decision is the right one at that time, and see where it will take me, and follow it through, and not be locked into it. If we find out it's not working the way we decided it was going to work, look at it and say, okay, it's part of that journey. Now I've found something new, I can make a new decision and look a different way.
Thank you, and thank you.
I don't know if that answers the question well enough, but
Oh, Stuart, you answered that question perfectly. We have the logical mind, we have the creative mind, and then we have the spontaneous mind. You've spoken to three different personality categories of people. And if we'd only dealt with the logical and only dealt with the physical, we would have been missing out an entire group of people who, like you, depend on the spontaneity and the excitement and the creativity of just doing it without getting bogged down and seeing where it goes, and then correcting it as you're going. and dealing with whatever shows up. It sounds, I know your life story. I know your history. You have an incredible, you are truly an adventurer, and who has landed in China and has created a life for yourself in China. So I think we are giving permission to everybody who's listening to follow your path the way that you need to do it, but also having that little bit of a safeguard of understanding that there are slight permissions and processes that you can follow that fit you, yourself. Okay. We are now at that amazing place where each of our guests gets to talk about themselves and what they have to offer our audience and our membership at sacredyou.love. I'd like to start with Stuart. Stuart, what are you offering? Or first of all, tell us a little bit more about you than what you told us before. How can we find you? What are you offering? What's unique about what you do? We have probably about 10-15 minutes to complete this portion before we have to sign off. So go for it.
Well, what I'm offering at Sacred You is I've got the Breakthrough the BS Barriers show, which starts immediately after this call. And what I find is that everybody I've spoken to has some level of mental belief system. And you could say BS or belief system, it's the same initials, but one is politer than the other. But we have this belief system which allows us to do things, or it traps us. And it keeps us locked into this paradigm. I mean, for instance, when I left the UK, I was with a group of friends I'd grown up with from school. And I invited them to come to Africa to see me and visit, because they could have lived like a king. But none of them did. And yet 6 or 7 years later, when I went back to visit my parents, I went to the pub one evening and everybody was doing the same thing. They were locked in their little world. And I went to one of them who was at the bar. I said, "Where's my beer?" And "Oh, I've not seen you." He was sort of embarrassed because he hadn't bought a beer. And he said, "Where have you been?" I said, "No, I'm living in Africa." He said, "Oh, that's right." He said, "Did you see the match on telly last night?" That was the end of the conversation. He couldn't go beyond his world. And that's where a lot of people live. They build it, and it's their comfort zone, and that's fine if they want to live there. But a lot of people get to a stage in life and say, there's got to be something more. This is an existence, and I help people to get past that barrier and find out what it is that's more for them. And I would suggest that one of my biggest skills is being able to listen and connect at a very, very, very deep level. Because it's only by really listening to people that we can start making sense of what they are missing in their life. And hypnotherapy, NLP, mindfulness, and positive psychology, I'm qualified in most of those, but they're just tools for me. The key is the listening and connecting to the person. So that's what I enjoy doing. And that's part of my growth process. 20 years in the UK, 20 years in Africa, now 20 years in China. So, all these things, all these stories are like this river behind me. That's my reservoir of wisdom. I can just dip into it and use what's needed when necessary. And we've all got that. We just don't realize it sometimes. And we just need a little bit of help and guidance to help us find it.
And how can people find you, Stuart?
The best way is to go onto LinkedIn and look at Stuart Elliot with a number 1 behind it, because I am. So other people have taken my name. I mean, if you go onto Google and you look at Stuart Elliot on Google, you'll see there's a drummer from Cockney Rebel, a band from the 70s and 80s. There's footballers, there's other people, but there's other people on LinkedIn with Stuart Elliot as well. So Stuart Elliot 1 is the best person to search for. Okay. And it's registered in Hong Kong, the LinkedIn account. So that will give you more information. Right. Or they can just reach me on stuart@spg.bz.
That information will also be in the comments below this. Mm-hmm. And what are you offering anything special to our viewers today, this morning?
Well, a free call, a conversation for an hour, and let's just hear what it is that's not going right for you or you're looking for more of, and we'll see how you can make it happen for yourself with a little bit of guidance.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Stuart. You've really been a shining light this evening. Appreciate it. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I never got to hear.
Marina, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Remember the time as well, please, and what it is that how people can reach you, and what it is that you're offering our viewers tonight.
Well, what I'd like to say is truly that what makes me happy is when I help people find their purpose, when I help people find their happiness, when I find, with easy, in easy steps that they can find what they're looking for. And it's not always easy to get there, but it certainly helps when you can speak and someone, as Stuart said, someone listens to you and someone speaks your language and truly finds what's working for you. So that is what I do. I now also, again, as I said, use hypnotherapy, and I am doing hypnobirthing, which I find exciting because it's a beautiful result at the end of the story. So I do that, and I'm also a speaker. I started at the onset of COVID. I started with my friend. I started a Sunday event, spiritual activism. I stepped down as I had too many other things going on. But our purpose was to, in darkness, give the light, send the light, help people through a community come together. And that's truly what I would like to do. How can people reach me? I have my website. It's Dream a Better Dream Now. And I also offer an hour of free consult. They can find me. And I will send them a questionnaire before, so to make the best of our time. And we take it from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Allie, your turn. Tell us a little bit more about your passions and how people can reach you, and what you're offering today as a thank you for our viewers having been part of this conversation.
Okay. Well, my name is Alison, Allie Perry-Davies. You can reach me at my website, alleywayart.com. That's ALIWAYART.com, or Alleyway Art page on Facebook, or alleywayart@gmail.com. So that's all the ways a person can reach me. A little bit about me is I'm a person who 8 years ago, everything kind of changed for me. And I've spent some time, well, I'd been a disability case manager and worked with people throughout the last 40 years with a variety of disabilities and challenges. And I now am doing things like a creative play, or art therapy. I'm doing sound baths and writing books. I have my podcast. Really what I'm doing is, when I wrote my book started out, actually, it was going to be called Forgive Mess, the messy journey in forgiveness. And as I was writing it, it became so much more. And it really became a book to address trauma in our lives, and most importantly, how do we break free from that? And so in my book, it talks a lot about using creativity and spirituality and forgiveness. My book, I don't talk about trauma itself. I talk about impact of trauma, and more importantly for me, ways to get out of that. And so from that, I ended up having my podcast, which is Find Your Joy, where people come on my show and they just really share about what gives them joy and what brings them joy in their life. Now, they might share a challenge, or they might not share a challenge that they faced in order to get them there. They don't need to have had some horrible life. What we really just need more of in the world right now is joy and hope and ways to get to that. So that's a little bit about me and what I'm about. I love to listen as well. And Stuart, everyone here, I've just loved your stories, and I will carry your story of that warrior for a while. I really appreciated that went quite deep with me, and so thank you for sharing that. And Marina, I really loved your bit by bit one. For me, I will add, as the same as my dear friends here now, I would be very happy to offer an hour of, and we will do meditation, sound bath. If they're local, it can be something else possibly, but I'm assuming that it'll be virtually, and I look forward to meeting with them.
And your information is going to be in the comments below this video when it is posted. They'll all be there. Okay. I'd like to share.
Thank you, Sue.
Oh, you're very
sorry
welcome.
if I hadn't said thank you. You just done a beautiful job. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to share another story of Stuart's. If I may, Stuart, you put something into the chat. May I share that with our viewers?
Of course. If I tell it, I'll take too long, so you could share it quickly.
Oh, no. Okay. Stuart said, I used hypnobirthing with my wife when we had our children, and that was a revelation. I had an out-of-body experience during the process. It's truly a powerful way to assist labor. So congrats to you, Marina. Wow, I love the way you just shrunk that right down. The dad had a powerful out-of-body experience while his wife was giving birth to his children. I mean, how much more incredible could that be? How many fathers have that opportunity to be that involved, that embodied in the birthing process? So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
What was funny was the staff, because they were talking in the local Chinese dialect to my wife, and I talk in English, but the staff said they'd never seen such a calm father during the birth. And I said, well, I wasn't there. And there was a body there. I was somewhere else. That's why I seemed calm.
That's wonderful. I love it. I'm going to share a little bit about me. My name is Sue Rumack. I am a life coach. I am a somatic trainer, teaching breath work and body work to help people get past their trauma triggers in order to re-embody themselves, reconnect head, body, mind, spirit, and soul, so that they come back into themselves. I work with highly sensitive empath professionals and entrepreneurs when they are just verging on those burnout symptoms that could take them over the edge and slide them down into that hole that Marina and Stuart and Ali were all talking about. And together we work on processes that are mind, body, brain, scientific processes that bring them back up into controlling the energies of all those people around them, so that they do have that energetic protection. They do have the mind, body, spirit, soul connection, reconnection. They are back in control of their physical, spiritual, and mental environments. It's something that I absolutely adore. I do happy dances around my home when people have breakthroughs, which they do in every session, little ones, like those baby steps that Marina was talking about. I can be reached at overwhelmmasterclasses.com. And I'm offering a new series. It will be 18 sessions long. It's going to basically take you through most of the year. That information will be in sacredyou.com, sacredyou.love, in the next few weeks. And like everybody else, I'm also offering that one-on-one discovery call free of charge for as long as it takes to get you to your next steps blueprint. Basically, I listen, I write stuff down. We talk about where you need to go, who you are, who you feel you need to be, and how you're going to get there. So I think this is something that each one of us does in our own specific way. Please do try to connect with the person who spoke to you most during this conversation and connect with them. And if more than one person spoke to you, contact all of them, because each one of us has something unique to say and we're offering it. So why not take us up on it? I'm Sue Rumack. I'm also the host of Life Force Activators, which is a tribe here on sacredyou.love. And we are all about finding that vibrancy, that electrical spark within ourselves that brings us back to soul and brings us back to humanity. Stuart is also, I believe you have your program, your show on Sacred You. Are you also a tribal leader as well?
Yeah, I've got the Breakthrough the BS Barriers. So that's my show I've got coming up
That's
next.
your show. Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you. Marina, do you have a tribe? I'm sorry, I don't know if you do. Are you a tribe host on Sacred You? No. And thank you. And Ali, are you a host in any way yet?
I am not yet, but I have been invited to be, and so I think I better just get on this.
Okay, Marina, the same with you. If you have not been approached yet to become a host, I think you'd be an incredible addition to the Sacred You family. Now, for all those people who are watching, who are members of Sacred You already, please be sure to go to the sacredyou.love website, check out all the tribes, see if there's one there that speaks to you that you have not checked out yet. If you are not yet a member of sacredyou.love, please go to the website and for $1, just one, it's less than a cup of coffee for 2 whole weeks, you get open access to everything that's offered on Sacred You. Join in anything that interests you, take part in anything that interests you, be a live member, be active. At the end of 2 weeks, if we have not met some need that you would like to have continued to be met, then you can just unsubscribe. Otherwise, stay on for $15 a month. $15 a month. You'll continue to have access for as long as you stay a member. And we would love to see you. We'd love to get to know you. We would love to embrace you and give you that big virtual hug when you join us. And we promise that when you do join, somebody will call you and talk to you about what it is you're looking for. You'll be heard. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been, I have to name it, Inspire, Innovate, Ignite Conversations That Count. And hopefully this conversation this evening with Ali Perry-Davies, Marina Shakour Haber, and Stuart Elliot has counted for you. Good night.